This deck might be the solution to this metagame that I have been looking for this entire time. One of the things that really stands out about the current metagame in Marvel Snap is that there's a ton of different really excellent cards to play, but that if you're building around something like Malekith or Anti-Venom, you want your early game cards to be not actually played in the early game very much. Your cards want to be cards that are good to pull off of Malekith, cards that get revealed late and really matter. This means that you can play a lot of really fun games with priority. This is combined with the fact that the Invisible Woman in this list lets you offset some of the disadvantage that you often have against the deck that has a lot of power, but not necessarily a lot of way to stop you interacting other than throwing priority, such as move bounce. So when you have a deck that puts all of that stuff together, you get this list. And I have been searching for, I guess, what I would describe as the alternate Anti-Venom Malekith list for a while. And it turns out it might not even involve Anti-Venom at all. This is a list that I got from a high infinite player named Duplicis. It is not the only high infinite Sera deck that is being played right now, and it is also not the only high infinite Sera deck that is using a card like Invisible Woman or Ghost in order to very specifically be able to handle the variety of dangerous threats in the metagame right now. I think that's unique, I think it's interesting, and I think there's a lot to be learned from a deck like this and how it approaches dealing with the current metagame, because it is a collection of such powerful cards, and you have such agency over where they go, and you are able to deal with nearly everything the game can throw at you, from Killmonger's late to blow up a 40 power Human Torch, to late Shadow Kings, to protecting your loot cage under Invisible Woman. All of that stuff is extremely valuable, and then Sera compounds the value of your cheap beaters, your cards that are playing much above their weight, cards like Sage and US Agent, by allowing them to be played exactly where you need them to be played on the final turn of the game. This is a deck that can very easily play a card on 3, Malekith on 4, Sera on 5, and end up winning every lane despite that. And I think that this kind of metagame positioning is very interesting. What I find even more interesting is that we're about to go into an Iron Patriot Victoria Handish meta, and this deck has tools to compete, but could also end up on the downside of that metagame if more people start playing Mobius and Mobius to deal with Iron Patriot. There's a lot of really interesting stuff that this deck could do, and I think that when we have an entrance to a new metagame, what I like to start with is a deck that has been a real solution to the previous metagame, and to me, this deck has felt like the best solution deck to the metagame that we just left. You can answer a ton of different strategies in flexible ways. Your hands are not sort of locked in on being one specific thing, and you have a ton of power and flexibility in terms of picking and choosing your game plan. Let's take a look at the individual cards in this list so you can get a better sense of how to play the deck. Shadow King is an absolute beast of a card. I think everyone knows just how powerful this card can be in a variety of different matchups, but he is sort of matchup specific. This is the kind of card that is exceedingly good against things like Havoc and Thena, and of course Move Bounce, but exceedingly not so good against things like the Ajax deck, where it's not actually going to be doing all that much. It's still a valuable part of what this deck does, since so many of the things that scale to Shang-Chi levels in the current metagame are scalers rather than just big guys. This is how you keep your opponents honest. The combination of this card and US Agent can really keep most power output at a manageable level. Invisible Woman does double duty here. You are very often unable to play many of your 2-drops on turn 2. You can play Invisible Woman on turn 2, but there is one major thing to consider, that if you play Invisible Woman, make sure you have a place to play Sera later. Sometimes this will lead to me playing Invisible Woman in an off lane, a lane that hasn't been revealed yet on turn 2, just so that I know the other lanes are safe places to play Sera, because you don't want to ever get priced into playing a Sera behind an Invisible Woman, because she won't do anything. This is the kind of planning that you're going to have to do when you play this deck. Mostly what this card is being used for is delaying the outputs on your cards. This can mean a delayed Sage to make sure that all your opponent's cards reveal first. This can mean a delayed Killmonger to make sure that Killmonger is hitting all of the 1-drops your opponent is playing on the final turn of the game. This can mean a delayed Shadow King, to make sure that your Shadow King lane is as good as you need it to be. Counterplay typically includes Cosmo and Eliath, and you have to be cognizant of those things. But typically this is a card that will successfully fill its role of delaying on reveals that you need to happen at the end of the game. It lets you play multiple games with priority, basically. You can have cards go off with priority. Let's say you take priority against a bounce deck. And you can also have cards go off behind Invisible Woman. This means that whenever you have a card that you need to have a specific timing, you can very often make it happen. Just the biggest 2-drop there is. Very often a 2/7. Very often bigger than a 2/7. An absolute monster. Cannot say enough good things about the card US Agent. The only bad thing to say about it is other decks also play Luke Cage, which, kind of sucks, but what can you do about that other than just get him with a Red Guardian? The card is a key component of your ability to stack up points in this list, which all Sera decks sort of scale and are viable only in so much as they are able to independently do points. Their tech is always going to be relevant, but they also need points in there, and US Agent and Sage are where a lot of your points are going to come from. The least guaranteed spot in this list is Lizard. Again, we talk about how Sera decks just kind of need to have points, and that is unfortunately true. These decks are only as good as the games they can win without access to all of their tech, and having points just straight up helps with that. If you want to run a different tech card here, I would totally understand, but we really do need the ability to just points. We need numbers in a deck like this, and I typically try to build for downside scenarios. Like, when my tech isn't doing anything, am I still going to be able to win 2 lanes on points? And Lizard does genuinely help with that. It's a 2/5. It's a 1/5 when you have Luke Cage and Sera, which is pretty often. This girl is big as hell. You're basically just using this as your 3 infinitely large. She's going to be like a 3/8, 3/10, 3/12 a lot of the time. Thanks to Sera, that often ends up being a 2/8, 2/10, 2/12. That's a really good value proposition. You can put her under Invisible Woman to delay her. You can put her on top of Invisible Woman or not on top of Invisible Woman, but on a different lane than Invisible Woman, so she goes off first some of the time. If you want to, say, Killmonger under Invisible Woman, bunch of different stuff you can do. The theory of this deck is basically playing the best 2s and the best 3s, so that after you play Sera, you're able to construct a final turn where you are very often putting out, let's say 17 to 20 points with varying amounts of, interaction with your opponent. A turn that's even something like Killmonger, Red Guardian, and Sage after a Sera, that's still usually going to be a lot of points, especially because Killmonger is typically pretty valuable in a list like this. Invisible Woman Killmonger is the most guaranteed answer to a bounce deck that has ever existed. It is a little less guaranteed against move bounce specifically, but it's pretty damn solid in a lot of different situations. The other main concern where Killmonger is very good is the Havoc deck, where they're playing, Bast onto the Hood, and then the Demon, and then a Kitty Pryde, and all that stuff. That deck does run Cosmo, so you're typically going to want to try to, even if you have Invisible Woman, you're going to want to try to throw priority, because they're probably going to Cosmo your Invisible Woman lane, and so you have to be pretty cautious about that kind of stuff. It can be useful to, use Invisible Woman as bait, and then, throw priority anyway, and then do stuff on a different lane. That can be pretty helpful to, generally try to beat that deck. Killmonger has massive upside. This is a card that can be absolutely game swinging. It can blow up a giant Human Torch. It can blow up a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of things that this card does, and being able to play with priority with it is really useful. I've even had this card beat stuff like, I have Invisible Woman Killmonger. I beat, a deck with that has cloned their Deadpool off of a Nico. They just play 2 giant Deadpools, Invisible Woman Killmonger, they die. That kind of stuff is just really, really strong. It just is. Luke Cage solves too many problems right now. Whether that's just the problems of various locations showing up, there are several that he just makes totally not matter. The problems of other decks playing Luke Cage, he solves all of those decks. Everyone investing heavily in Ajax and Hazmat, those cards don't do anything when your opponent has a Luke Cage. And that's really sort of the premise of this list. This is basically the Ajax Hazmat deck, but instead of that, we're playing cards that are better in the mirror. Okay, Ajax in the mirror is a 5/7. If you're going to play an Ajax and we both have Luke Cage, I would far rather play a Sera. That's basically the theory of this deck. The best damn tech card in the entire game, Red Guardian, is the problem solver du jour right now. Just an absolute monster. Part of the reason Invisible Woman can be good is because she protects stuff like Luke Cage from your opponent's Red Guardian, because they're going to have to Invisible Woman or Red Guardian the Invisible Woman in order to even get the chance to Red Guardian the Luke Cage, because the Luke Cage is going to be under the Invisible Woman. Stuff like that, really, really important, really, really useful, and goes to show just how dominant this card is as a metagame force. It can deal with so many things and needs to be specifically accounted for a lot of the time in deck building. We've talked about how important it is for decks like this to have stats. Copycat is stats. I think you could also try something like Gladiator here, maybe a Rocketing Groot. The point is, you want a 3-drop that is big. That is going to be something that is necessary, and Copycat has a lot of good targets right now that make her even bigger than her already very generous 3-5 stat line. Psych, you can't replace with Gladiator because we're already playing him. This is sort of the idea, right? Like, we have always, throughout the entire time Sera decks have been good, I've been banging the same drum. You can't just be tech. You need to have some points. Gladiator is points. It's very, very simple. You just need actual beef in this deck. Your final turns are very often going to be 3-3-2-2 after a Sera. You need that beef. It is incredibly important that you actually have something big that you can play. Malekith is a damn monster. We talk about how a lot of Sera decks are built in the same way that a lot of Malekith decks are built, and that synergy is very clearly on display here. This is the kind of card that goes with Sera for multiple reasons. A, it's effectively drawing a non-Sera card out of the deck, making you more likely to draw Sera on 5, very valuable. B, all of the cards that you play in this deck are cards that you want to reveal late for the most part, right? These are all cards that you are either A, very happy getting for free, or B, very happy revealing late. And so that means that this card is even more upside, in much the same way that you want your cards in Sera to be the kind of stuff that is easy to discount, right? Sera cards tend to be cheap. That is the baseline understanding here, because when you have a 2 cost, that's a 50% discount from reducing 1 energy. When you have a 3 cost, that's a 33% discount from reducing 1 energy. A 4 cost, that's only a 25% discount. A 5 cost is 20. So the most efficient cards to play with Sera are 2s and 3s. That's where you're getting the most value out of her discount. Malekith wants you to do the same thing. The most efficient cards to play with Sera are cards that want to reveal late and get big value out of it. Malekith wants you to do the same thing. These cards are simpatico. They go together. Like I said, the basic premise of this list is basically, we're going to be the Ajax deck, but in the Luke Cage on Luke Cage mirror, I have Sera, you have a 5/7. And that's just a big advantage for me. Like, that's the whole deck, right? Like, we are both doing this Luke Cage thing, but you're playing a 5/7, you're playing Hazmat, I'm playing good cards. My cards have stats independent of that. I have Copycat, I have Gladiator, I have Sage. These are cards that have stats independent of my ability to afflict you with anything. And your cards, on the other hand, are all dependent on you being able to afflict me with stuff. Ergo, we're sort of the Luke Cage deck that beats the other Luke Cage deck. This could change. A lot of Mobius being run, Iron Patriot stuff, we'll see. Right now, that's how this feels to me. Finally, I'd like to wrap up with a bit of a plea. Tuesday videos always do pretty poorly for me because I do my new card reviews on Wednesday, and I don't think I know what people want to see on Tuesday. So let me know what it is you want from me on Tuesday videos. Do you want, like, theory crafts? I'd be willing to try them. I'm not a big fan of theory crafts, but I really just want to give people what they want. My Tuesday videos typically do pretty poorly. I don't really expect anything different from this one. No matter how excited I am about the deck, I feel like I'm just missing something about what people actually want to watch on the day a new season drops. So thank you so much for watching. If you did make it this far, I really appreciate it. We're going to jump into some gameplay right now. You've been phenomenal. I've been Cam Best, and I'll see you in the next one. I couldn't. Well, that doesn't help me at all. I like that. I appreciate that I am over there, you know? See, I feel like I might get Polaris here. Boom. Do I win or lose off that? 7? We're good. 8. 10. Oh my god, I couldn't even count. Interesting. Quicksilver. So we're looking at a Lion type deck. Oh. Interesting. That makes me feel less good about my potential gladiator, I think. I do like getting rid of a Shang. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. We just... Oh, whoa! That's a 3-5 rocket in Groot. You know if they're changing Token Tuesday to 700 gold? I have no idea. I have no knowledge of that at all. Never seen anything about that, honestly. Sure. Wow, they played one card. That's a really good card, though. We win unless this fucks us. Alright, we're good. We win big time unless that, like, super took a shit on us. Let's monger some kills, baby. Love that for me. Love that for me. I swear to God, if this is another mirror, I'm gonna cry. Oof. I once again forgot that that was not the Asgard turn. But we should still Asgard our way through this. They're leaving. There's no shop this day. This is the most out of here anyone has ever been. Come on now. Holy shit. Brother. Ain't no fucking way, dude. Ain't no fucking way, dude. God damn. Just stay in that? Just darn ass. Interesting. I do have a decent amount of things that are on reveal effect, but I also have a decent amount of good bodies, meaning Tarnax might not be the exact best thing I want. Quicksilver Hawkeye? I mean, this makes sense, right? I don't care too much about this loot cage, so I'm accepting that it's like Eliath bait here. Oh, yeah, sure. Could be red G bait. I don't mind. Yeah, I'll get Wiccan. Like, it's not my favorite thing in the world, but speed's kind of sick. Ah, well, you know, we got a loot cage. Doesn't do anything, buddy. Really interesting spot. I mean, they could do a million different things here. They're genuinely... You should have opened the one where the police officer is going down. Dude, I missed. I have such bad variant timing. I genuinely have such bad variant timing. Rocket Groot not working when Luke is out? Correct. Rocket Root, not a Luke card. Alright, let's see what happened. Alright, they did some shit. Annoying, but mostly fine. We win a tiebreaker, correct?